you, Cathaoirleach, and thank you for the presentations earlier. It's really good to have all of the decision makers in the room at the same time. Sometimes it feels a bit like Wimbledon, going from back and over from one to the other. So I'm really happy that you're all here this morning. First issue I want to raise with you is the Versatis patch and the fact that it's affecting 25,000 people. Now, since the 1st of December, I have been contacted by many people across the board who are really concerned about this. And this is going right through the life cycle. So from older people, from younger people with arthritis, but all of them have the same thing in common. They are all in chronic pain. Now, I know that you will have been contacted by a large number of GPs who have said that this is the treatment that their patients require. So I am baffled as to why it has been withdrawn. There's a couple of things I want to say about this. And the first thing, I suppose, is the fact that the message it sends out that if you have the money, you won't be in pain. But if you don't have the money, you have to continue in pain. Because the alternative treatments for most of that chronic type of pain is either the morphine or the paracetamol. And what the patients are telling me is that the paracetamol and the other drugs that are given just are not working. They're not doing the job. And they really don't want to go on morphine because of all the side effects of that. Now, I want to ask, have you done a cost-benefit analysis on that decision? Because the other thing I'm really concerned about is the mental health impact that's escalating, even only in this short time since it's being denied on the medical card or on the drug refund scheme. Because I would put it to you that the amount of money that the HSE, or the amount of additional money that the HSE will end up spending on antidepressants and on other drugs that don't work will far outweigh the €30 million that is being spent on Versatis. And that is outside the cost of the isolation. What it is doing to the patients is, I have a 31-year-old constituent, for example. She has chronic arthritis and a lot of pain. Now, she was able to get out and drive around the community and lead somewhat of an independent life. But she can't now. She is confined to her bed, and all the calls I get from her is from her bed. And I'm extremely worried about her and about the other patients that are left like this. So for somebody like that, then their next option is, or their option is to go to the pain management clinic to say, what do I do here? I'm immobilised, what can I do? How can you help me? And people are waiting, like for this particular patient, she's on the waiting list since July 2016. And when she contacted them, when Versatis was no longer available, when she contacted them again, they said at least it'll be another 15 months before you do that. So there's nowhere to turn for these patients other than their GPs. And their GPs are advocating in the best way that they can. So I want to ask you, what's the process for re-looking at this? And are there other drugs? And I know you will come back and you will tell me this was designed especially for people who, in the aftermath of shingles and all of that. But there must be other drugs within the system that have multiple, that treat multiple conditions. And this is one such drug. So that is my first question. My second.
In relation to the patches, it's important to stress there has been no withdrawal of reimbursement for those patches. What there has been is the introduction of a secondary layer of approval. So on a 3-month basis, it is possible on application by a general practitioner to the Medicines Management Programme for approval to be granted for continued prescription. And that is.
Can I just clarify that? I just want to make sense of it. So if somebody goes to their GP today, can he prescribe, and heretofore he has prescribed the Versatis patches, can he do that? Can he write out the prescription today?
This new system came in last September, and at that point in time, a patient could be started on the patches for a 3-month period, but within that 3-month period, if the GP wanted to continue prescribing, then they needed to register them on the application system. In other words, what's been introduced is a higher level of clinical supervision for the prescribing of those patches.
So once the GP has them registered, has the patient registered on the system, then there's no problem. It's as it was prior to September.
But it's subject to 3-month review, 3-month renewal.
That's not what's happening on the ground at all.
Well, I have in front of me the exact guidance from the Medicines Management Programme,
Okay.
and that is the system that's in place. So general practitioners can apply using the online system which they're familiar with for approval for continuing to prescribe for a 3-month period. Now, that does not mean that in every instance that approval will be given, because there are clinical judgments to be made, but where it is given for 3 months and is subject to renewal.
Who makes the clinical judgment?
The Medicines Management Programme, which is staffed by clinicians.
Okay, and is the GP's submission taken into account, or his recommendation?
Yes, and that's the only basis upon which they make a consideration, is a referral from a GP.
Okay, and what's the timeline for it?
Just on that. No, I just have a question of my own, if I could. Just on that, could you maybe account for, and there has been a fair amount of discussion about this recently, and I mean, you appear to be suggesting that nothing has changed since September.
No.
Since September, and that but why can you account for the? Have there been a large number of people turned down? Do you think it could be a case that GPs are not aware of this? Because that would be quite worrying. I don't think that's the case.
I would not think it's the case that GPs are unaware. I don't have data as to the proportions of applications approved and not approved, but clearly the reason this was introduced was a strong sense that this patch was being inappropriately prescribed both by condition and by duration, and the clear intention was to bring greater clinical supervision, which could result in patients who would otherwise have gone on to receive these patches on an overly extended period, perhaps for conditions which are not indicated, and consequently it's likely and is inevitable that there will be some patients who will be being switched to other medications or not going on to this indication. That was the intention of the programme.
Okay, so I have two people who are indicating on that specific issue. Senator Conway-Walsh, you raised it, and
I just have to tease out that because I think there needs to be clarity around it. So if you're saying that provided, okay, so the GP has to register the patient onto this list, which will then be approved. What's the timeline for the approval, and is the list open indefinitely? So there isn't a closed period by which the GP has had to register the. So somebody going in today that becomes aware of it today that these patches are no longer available on the medical card or on the drug refund fund scheme. So they're going in today. They're presenting to their GP. Their GP is making the assessment that yes, you need to continue on these because the other drugs won't work for you and morphine isn't suitable for you. So just talk me through the patient. So the GP registers online, and how long then does it take to get approval for that?
I don't have the precise data on that, but normally these online processes work fairly seamlessly. So
it might. Look, we've already had a discussion at the start of this about the time of the responses to the